Hello, everyone. Thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. We're really happy to have you. Um, but hello, Aaron. It's good to see your face. Have you been traveling this week?
I spent some time in Oklahoma and Arkansas and got to see some country and see a little bit about what people are facing right now. So had a lot of good conversations. But this is that time of year, Abby, as you know, that from now until about first part of April, it's going to be 8 days a week, pretty much. So it's just it's one of those times that we live for, I guess, and just everybody out in the woods and enjoying the time, and unfortunately having to address the pig concerns. But yeah, so as far as my travel is concerned, any of y'all you're loading up this afternoon on the webinar. If I'm going to be in your area, definitely let us know. Give us a call, and I'll definitely be glad to come by and visit with you. And just this last week, I was in Hot Arkansas and had a trap user that was in Mena, Arkansas, and had a question, and I dropped by there and had a visit with them and new trap owner Abby. They set the trap this last week was their first week to set the trap and had two successful catches for a total of 36 pigs and two catches. But wanted to know a little bit more information about how to use the tree sets. And as you know, there's just a few trees in Arkansas, and so went by and showed them how to set up a tree set, and now they're going to go a little bit more incognito after those pigs, not having to worry about those posts. So the other thing, something to think about too, Abby, with this time of year, getting into
Mhm.
literally Saturday morning starts bow season for me in Texas, is not having to use those posts if you can use those trees and not worry about spooking your deer. If you're going to be hunting deer in the area, you don't have to use those posts as much whenever you're using those tree sets. So, but yeah, I'll be in this next week is going to be one of those kind of a regroup weeks, and then be out after that back to Oklahoma, and then there'll be a trip to Mississippi, and then several trips just here and about and around. So I know that typically it's about 3,500 miles a month for me once the fall of the year starts all the way through the spring. So yeah, folks, so if I'm in your area, let me know. Even if I'm not in the immediate future, let me know. And whenever I do come through there, we'll give you a buzz and hit you up. I do know, Abby, too, that Nathan and Randy both are going to be doing a lot of traveling, and so any of the three of us would be more than glad to come by and cuss and discuss pigs with you and see what we can do to help out. So, but one thing Abby wanted to do before we did get kicked off, I know that tonight Abby had said that you'd put your questions in the Q&A feature part of the platform here. So one of the questions I wanted to ask you, just to make sure, one, that you knew where that Q&A feature was, to be able to put those questions in there. And then some information for me is in the fall of the year. So what I want you to do is put the answer to this in the chat in that Q&A feature. Is in the fall of the year, what do you see to be your biggest challenge when you're trapping pigs? I don't know if that's bait leverage, if it's non-target species, if it's just too many hunters in the woods, whatever. But in that Q&A feature, if you would put it in there for me, what is your biggest challenge that you have to overcome in the fall of the year in order to catch pigs? So, but
Yeah,
folks,
that's
definitely
a
give
that's
us
a
a
great
holler.
question.
Yeah,
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 and
and I
so we
mean,
can start reviewing those at the end and get the ball rolling
yeah.
on the kind of stuff that you guys will be needing. But I believe that we have everyone here with us. So again, thanks for joining us and welcome to tonight's webinar, The Trap Decision. I'm Abby Good. I am the trap support specialist here at Pig Brig. So if you ever run into any issues and you give us a call or shoot us an email, I'm normally there behind the phone. So it's nice to meet you guys. So let's get started. I'd like to welcome our speaker, Dr. Aaron Sumrall. Take it away and feel free to tell a little bit more about yourself as well.
So that's appreciate it, Abby. So yeah, that's what this is coming up on 4 years for me with Pig Brig, joining the team coming from Texas A&M, and it's been a fun stay, and I'm looking forward to the next 4 years. It's always a challenge as we evolve. So Basically, this afternoon, the title on there is something to ask before you buy, or you may be a new trap owner, and it's just something that you're new to pig trapping. So that's what we're going to talk about this afternoon, and so uh, as we navigate through that, let's see if I can get the technology to work for me. There we go. So first things first is that what we need to think about is just the problem itself. So the pig problem comes in a myriad of different phases or forms or thoughts and so forth. And but the main thing is just the scope of the problem is the damage, and damage may be monetary. It could be environmental or ecological. It could be recreational damage. We're getting a huge increase in the number of calls that we get from suburban and urban areas, from golf courses, from recreational locations like parks and things like that, where there may be a little bit tougher um, road in there to try to figure out what the economics behind that damage is, other than it's just bad and it costs a lot to fix it. Then you got other damage there that you're talking about, like what we see on the screen. It's agriculture damage, where you can see in there that drill put that weed in the ground, and those pigs that come back into that area and run where that drill is put that seed in the ground. Where ag damages, we can definitely put some dollars behind those ag damages, and they really get pretty astronomical pretty quickly. For those of you that may hunt, anytime that you put food plot in the ground, especially if it's larger seeds that you use in your food plot mixes, those pigs definitely come in there and turn that into a buffet, and they just recultivate the ground for you, so you can plant again and without having to till the next time. So the cost is something that's out of sky, out of sight in a lot of places there, but there is definitely a difference in the damage and the cost, and then the scale of the situation. In a situation there where we're talking about scale, is it going to be more transient pigs that may only cause damage 2, 3, 4 days out of the month and then they move on, but they come back in that same rotation? Or is it something that you see where pigs are just never ending damage and it's large scale, where we may see many acres of agriculture crop destroyed in one night? So the scale of the problem is going to be something that we need to think about with regard to the equipment that we use, how we develop an adaptive strategy to the movement, and then also too, what's the time that we have to allocate toward the management effort or that abatement of those pigs and the problem thereof. So the big question, I guess, there is then, so why do we worry about trapping? Because we have several different legal methods to be able to combat pig damage. But so the trapping aspect of it is, no matter where you look in the planet, no matter where you look at in the research, all of the research across the globe is going to indicate that sound feral hog management is going to be based on a trapping approach. So what you look at in the economics of trapping is far more effective with your return on investment than any of the other strategies out there. So we can trap pigs a lot cheaper than we can using aerial gunning or using hunting dogs, or by the time you go out and buy you a thermal firearm with a suppressor on it and all that, then those costs per pigs can be pretty high. So trapping is definitely a foundation. The other things is with the foundational side of it is that say if you're using hunting dogs and you've got a pretty horrendous pig problem with there's 40 or 50 pigs in a given sounder, those dogs will work and they'll give you everything they've got. But no matter how much they give you, they're still not going to be able to get ahead of that total number of pigs. When we can trap and knock that overall number down by a pretty significant percentage, then our other management strategies, our other legal methods that we have, become much more effective in total control. So we're gonna implement those methods and those strategies accordingly to get the best return on our investment. But everything is founded off of a sound trapping approach. So when we think about trap systems, the types of the traps that are out there, they come in three flavors, basically, folks. So you got a smart trap, which everybody I think knows what a smart trap is. You can set the trap up and operate it remotely from your phone, so forth and so on. So that provides with a lot of latitude. The smart traps were the first one that you could legitimately consider or hope to catch a full sounder, as long as the individual holding the phone didn't get a little bit trigger happy and drop the gate too soon and leave pigs on the outside. So the efficiencies there can be extremely good, and they can be extremely bad, and it's just a matter of who's holding the button there to drop that gate. Then we've got the Pig Brig Trap System, the net trap. So that's something that comes to the forefront there as far as, again, too, the opportunity to catch full sounders, but maybe not so much on the technology requirement. It allows you to sleep, allows you to be able to get to some places that we'll talk about a little bit later on. And then we've got the old box trap there at the bottom of the screen. So, in my personal opinion, and that's where it is, it's my personal opinion about the only value that I see out of a box trap is you can catch enough pigs to put in with your deer meat to make sausage. You're not going to get ahead of a pig problem with a box trap. Whenever you think about it this way on a box trap, is if you compare it to how many pigs can you put between the wheel wells of your pickup truck and shut the tailgate, because that's about how big a box trap is. So there's just not much room there. So whenever we're looking at those sounders of relative sizes, 20, 25, 30 pigs in a sounder, you catch two in the box trap. The rest of them, you run the risk of educating, and then it makes it tougher on any of the other trap types to get their job done. So some of the other considerations there that we need to think about in there is whenever you're looking at being a trap owner, or you may be a new trap owner and thinking to expand, are cost considerations. Okay, so what is the cost that the pigs are imposing on you? So you got to look at that threshold, that economic threshold of where can you justify the purchase of a trap or the purchase of additional traps. So knowing that economic threshold is going to be pretty important to knowing what your cost considerations can be. How much are you able to legitimately spend before you are past the economic threshold yourself? So that's something to definitely keep in mind. Then obviously the maintenance and the tech needs. So is the trap going to require that you make sure things stay greased up, that you make sure that things stay out of the mud when it's not being used so they don't start to rust, so forth and so on. The next thing comes to mind really quickly is the setup and the mobility, because pigs show up in places we didn't think they were or that they would, and then we need to reply, or we need to respond quickly to wherever those pigs show up, and to make sure that we get that problem stopped before they really get out of hand. And then we think about capture efficiencies and so forth. Is are you trying to catch small sounders? And if what I'm saying with small sounders is 5 or fewer pigs. If you've got 5 or fewer pigs, then could that be a situation that if you've got an oversized box trap, bigger than normal, yeah, you might be able to do some good with that if those pigs aren't already trap shy. But whenever we're thinking about those smaller sounders, do you really even need to? If it's less than three pigs or fewer, the economics behind that is just to simply put out a bait pile, condition them to a bait pile, and use a firearm to dispatch those individual numbers from 3 or fewer pigs. So think about your capture efficiencies and what you need to do, and what would be the best choice of traps that you need to put into practice. So some other questions about that, about the traps and the right one for you, I guess, because all of us know that just regardless if our every neighbor around us is using a certain kind of piece of equipment, it may just not be for us. So we need to ask some questions of is that particular piece of equipment going to be for you, or what type is going to be for you. You got to ask yourself there, is it, you know what, it might be one of those things that the budget right now looks good, but you think about worst case scenario, is are you going to have enough budget in there to be able to run these in the future, and what could be some of those constraints that you need to worry about there? Is that if you're looking at smart trap purchase, yeah, you get that trap in place, everything looks good and fine, but then is it going to be something you can justify paying that $50+ per month for the rest of the year, whenever you may only be trapping 2 or 3 months out of the year? So that's something to keep in mind. And then the other thing is to think about this is that are there any time constraints on your time? So whenever we look at that as far as time constraints, how much time is it going to take to set the trap up? Can you do it by yourself? Are there constraints around what the pigs have imposed on you? It may be that you weren't expecting pigs and now all of a sudden they're on you now. Is how quickly can you respond to a given location to be able to trap those pigs before they get out of hand or ruin the resource that you were trying to protect. And that goes into the moving the trap. So and some may say, well, you know what, if moving the trap is a concern, and I'll just use fewer panels on a smart trap to get into an area, or I may just use a box trap or something like that and be able to move it faster. Well, if you make concessions one area to downsizing the trap, are you cutting your nose off to spite your face per se? Because if you got large sounders, you can't afford to downsize on the trap just to be able to move it faster. But the other thing is in there that you may think about too is, do you need multiple traps? Is it a certain breeding phase that those pigs are in, that they just don't like to tolerate one another? You may need to have multiple traps in a given location where they're in close proximity to one another, and be able to fight those pigs through those certain situations there. So there's quite a few things that you need to ask. And just because the neighbors set up one way doesn't mean that might be the best way for you to set up, because we can definitely see across the planet, just the simple fence line there will make management plans look completely different from one neighbor to the next. So some of these questions that you need to think about on your own, and then if you have any other questions, is reach out and ask some folks that may be able to fine tune or help you hone that plan in. So one of the things we start looking at as far as more specifically, more with I guess with a microscope there, is that uh, on the trap systems, on the net trap, on your pig brig. Obviously, if you're a pig brig owner, we do not require cell phone service. We don't have to have an activation to be able to drop the trap or to be able to drop a gate or anything like that. Is, it's one of those things we say, you set it in the afternoon, and a lot of times you can sleep till tomorrow and pick those get those pigs out tomorrow and be able to sleep. So all of us tend to like to sleep a little bit more than if we can. So the other benefit there is the portability. Literally, if using tree sets, if I'm using tree sets, which now I've got to the point where I'm using tree sets about 90% of the time. I seldom drive post anymore, just because where I live in East Texas, we got all the trees we need. And then pretty much everywhere I go, there's going to be trees of sufficient size and proximity that I can use tree sets there. And in that situation, literally my Pig Brig Trap System, I put everything in a duck decoy bag and I backpack it in. So I can get wherever I want to, and the portability side of it with the Pig Brig Trap System, getting into those remote locations. And then the other thing about the effectiveness backed by the research on the Pig Brig, this is the way that I literally was introduced to Tony and Vicky and Pig Brig Trap Systems, was through the research. And some of the reason that the Pig Brig is what it is today is because of the research and what we saw worked and what we saw didn't work. And some of the examples of that is you'll notice on the Pig Brig that you see now that we don't have anything that's knotted. Your knotted your bore shield is a solid piece of mesh there that doesn't have knots in there. The reason why we go away from the knots is very, very early on in research, we it became very obvious that any abnormally in that net, which a knot is an anomaly, if there's anomalies in that net, those pigs, being an intelligent species, would chew on an anomaly until they cut the net. Well, if that knot was the anomaly, they'd chew on the net till they cut it. And a lot of times it didn't take that long, and it really didn't matter what material we used, is those knots presented a challenge there of one to keep those pigs from chewing through, and then that could even lead to a safety concern of the trapper. So very, very early on, the knotted systems, the knotted bore shields were removed and replaced with a woven system there. Then the other thing there that's on the research side of things too is the anchor stakes. If you've got a Pig Brig Trap System, got to use those anchor stakes in the middle. Those are there for reasons of efficiency and safety. So one on the efficiency is it keeps the skirt positioned where it needs to be. Whereas if those anchor stakes were not in place and that the pig started to hit the side of that net, the offside, the opposite side from where the pig is hitting the net would kick up and it would allow pigs to escape. And then on the side where the pig was hitting the net, it would roll the net up to the perimeter of the posts and give that pig a place to focus on and go under. So on the catch efficiencies, the anchor stakes are critical. On the safety side of things, they're also equally critical, just because if that pig is hitting the net and the offside kicks up and it lets pigs out while you're standing at the net, then there may be a situation there where you've got a sow trying to protect pigs, and now we got a safety concern on the trapper side where we don't want those pigs coming at those trappers in the processes of trying to protect those little ones. So there's a whole plethora of different things we can talk about with the pig brig system that's backed by research and backed by the science, and the things that what we've seen over the years of shown us to work, and some of the things that we've had to change that just was that obvious to us, that the pigs taught us things we didn't know. And which leads to the last thing about the pig brig system is that there are no moving parts. So we know whenever we have moving parts, we have more malfunctions than we should. So smart traps, like I said earlier, whenever smart traps came on the market, if you've got someone that can practice patience, they were a legitimate way to potentially catch a full sounder. But again, too, that's going to depend heavily on the patience of the trapper and so forth there. And but it does require remote monitoring and control. So if you got those notifications on your phone, sometimes it can get frustrating to have raccoons trigger a notification at 2 o'clock in the morning and wakes you. But they do present the opportunity there to be able to catch a full sounder if you can exhibit patience. The other thing that what we need to think about in here too, with the smart trap systems, is that if you are in a situation where you cannot get to the trap at first light, you may have to leave pigs in a trap for 2 or 3 days at a time. Then you do not need to be using a net system. You do not need to be using a pig brig. A pig brig is a pig trap. It's not a pig holding facility. So if you can't get to the traps at the appropriate time, then you need to use a metal trap, a smart trap that will be able to handle a little bit more of that prolonged abuse from those pigs. And if you can't make it there in sufficient time after daylight. So the other thing that you're going to see there is higher upfront cost and continuous cost. Well, the higher upfront cost is obviously just the cost of the trap itself. So they're going to be comparable to the pig brig. They're going to be a little higher. They're going to be a little more expensive there. But then also to the continual cost of the data plans and some of those technologies that are in there that could short out any kind of electrical components or anything like that. And then if you do have any kind of malfunction of that system, largely the system would have to be sent in for work rather than you being able to do it yourself, which means you'd take the whole trap out of production for you. Um, and then obviously we'd have to make sure before we put a trap up in a given area that you definitely check on the connectivity and the tech side of it to make sure that you're going to have a signal at that trap location. If you don't have a strong enough signal at that trap location, you may be able to use booster antennas or something like that to be able to help you out. But before you trailer everything in there and solicit some help from your neighbors or your buddies, then you may want to go in there and check that trap site location to make sure you're going to have sufficient signal. Okay, there's one thing that we did not have on here. We covered the pig brig system and we covered the smart trap systems. We did not cover the box trap systems, and there's a reason for that. Is that there is little to no benefit of box trap systems whenever we're looking at total eradication or a significant population reduction when with wild pigs. The other concern around box traps and trapping for wild pigs is the non-target concern, in primarily catching deer. It is something that is very widely known that you do run the risk of catching deer in a box trap, and then unfortunately in a situation where you catch deer in a box trap, it typically doesn't end well for the deer. They'll break legs, break necks, so forth and so on. Or they could have just prolonged stresses and build up the lactic acid that they can't get out of their body quick enough, and it leads to those deer dying from just that lactic acid going septic and causing those deer to die over time. So we haven't addressed the box traps for a reason, and so those are the quick and dirty reasons of it. Some common questions in there I think that we've already talked about there that you need to think about with regard to the trap systems themselves or safety concerns. Making sure that the manufacturing of the trap itself has met those safety concerns where you can feel comfortable being at that trap with pigs in the trap. And so obviously, if you got a smart trap there, you want to make sure that those panels are of sufficient height that those pigs can't get over the top of those panels. You want to make sure that those panels have good seal with the ground where they can't go under the ground, under the panels to get you. So several safety concerns there. There even could be safety concerns surrounding the pig itself. Whereas if you've got traps that are in areas that the public can access, sometimes those bloody, nasty pigs that have hurt themselves inside metal traps, they find their ways onto media and into the news and things like that. And then there's an animal welfare concern. Typically, the trapper is held responsible for those animal welfare concerns there. So and then the other with the pig brig, we talked about the pig brig itself, and the reason behind the construction and the engineering of the pig brig are to address those safety concerns for both the pig and the trapper. So some things to keep in mind there is whenever you start selecting the trap of choice. The other thing is the time to reset. How often do you need to catch those, or can you catch those pigs, and so forth? And that is going to be one based on what the pigs are willing to do, and number two is going to be based on a sound protocol. So over the years, over the many years, 30 years now, or more than 30 years now that I was in the adult life of catching pigs, have looked at it multiple times. And where is there a threshold at on how long can you trap pigs before you start to educate them? And that number is a very, very hard, definitive 5 nights. So regardless of the trap type, if you're going out there to trap pigs and you catch pigs tonight, you don't need to try to trap pigs more than 4 more nights before you back away, because at the end of that 5 night period, you've either caught all the pigs or you begin to educate all those pigs. So the time to reset is going to depend on what the pigs are willing to do and how long you've already been trapping those pigs. But also too, if you do have a game camera there, which is, it doesn't matter if it's cell based or an SD camera, is if you know that you've got 20 pigs coming to a conditioning trap and you catch all 20 in night one, don't go back and reset that trap again for night two, because there's not anything in the area, or not anything that we're aware of in the area. So after you know you've caught everything coming to a conditioning trap, put the trap back into conditioning and go ahead and bait it again just to see if anything's in the area. And that's for those of you that were here whenever I was talking to Abby earlier about my week this week in Arkansas, is that's what those guys did. That guy did that. There was a brand new trap owner, has only had the trap about 3 weeks and made 2 catches in his first week of putting the trap out. But what he did, he had a catch of 15. And he asked, do I immediately go back to set that trap again? And I said, well, how many did you have on a camera that you thought were coming to the trap? And he said, well, I only thought I had 13, but I caught 15. And I said, well, then don't go back and set it to catch again. You may not have anything in the area. Let's go back and see what happens. So what he did after he caught the 15 is he put the trap back into conditioning and he baited it again. And 2 nights later, another sounder of 21 pigs come in. He conditioned those pigs for a couple of more nights, and he set the trap, caught all 21 again. So he actually caught 2 more pigs than he had over observations and conditioning. He thought that he only had 34 out of 2 sounders, but he actually caught 36. But definitely be patient in how you do that, and let the pigs tell you what they're willing to do. And then also you need to think about here is scaling traps to bigger operations. If you've got a situation there where you're trapping pigs and you start out with one pig brig because you think I've got 3 locations that I need to trap. Can I cover 3 locations with one net to begin with? Yeah, probably so. If you got one pig brig trap system, you can probably cover 3 locations. until it warrants the purchase of another Pig Brig Trap system. Whereas if you're scaling for bigger operations and you're using any of the other metal traps, box traps, anything like that, and you need a trap in 3 locations, you're going to have 3 different traps. So that can get pretty expensive pretty quickly if you're having to scale up. And that can get pretty costly pretty quick. So thinking about the trap type that you select, and do you have to scale up? And it very well could be that now that you may have a metal trap and you need to scale up quickly now and you need to do it on a budget of sorts, then it might be that you combine trap types. You keep your metal trap working for you and you add pig brigs to that where you can move them around quickly and get to an area where those pigs are in rapid time. So with that, I think that was pretty much what we were going to wrap up with tonight. We wanted to try to make sure we didn't cover you with a whole heck of a lot of content this afternoon in case you had a lot of questions there. So I think what we're going to do, just as you're thinking about your questions and putting them into the Q&A, is definitely don't forget we've got your back. So here's our contact information on the screen right now. And as always, you'll talk to me or Abby, you'll talk to Randy, you'll talk to Shannon and Margaret. So you're going to talk to Pig Brig. You're not talking to an answering service. So give us a call. And for those of you that are trying to scratch your head and think about what a tree set would look like, there's your tree set right there and on the left hand side of the screen. And it's a pretty simple, pretty fast way to respond to pigs once you get to using it and kind of get the confidence in it. So but Abby, I think what we're going to do, I think at this time, I don't know if there's anything in the Q&A side, but if you've got any questions, definitely put them into the Q&A, and we'll be glad to answer them. Or Abby, if you've got any other questions.
If you have any like questions about anything we went over today or any questions before you purchase, please drop them in the Q&A. But we'll go through some of the questions that I have here as you guys think about it. So like the first thing I have on my list, I'm going to give it to you, Aaron. So what should I expect if I'm trapping on soft ground? How does this trap handle on soft ground?
Couple of things. First and foremost is that if you're trapping soft ground, it's going to depend on, is it muddy soft ground or is it soft ground because of organic matter or sand. So if it's organic matter or deep sugar sand, instead of using a 6.5 foot post like we normally recommend, go to a 7 foot post. So that deeper, that longer post will get a little bit more into the ground, give you more stability and so forth. If it's because of a wet, a muddy ground, a soft ground and muddy, you may need to still use that 7 foot post. But one of the things you think about on your potentially muddy grounds is first and foremost is site selection. Is look at the topography of your ground and see if you can put any slope at all into that trap site location, because that's the benefit of the pig brig is that I've trapped on some slopes over 20-degree angle and the pig brig performs perfectly well. So if you can get to a trap location where you get any degree of slope on it at all that can shed the water off quickly, that number one is going to help you in a lot of the muddy ground. The second thing is going to help out in that muddier ground to keep from having some soft stuff or mud adhesion or anything like that is to get pine straw or it could be old wheat straw or rice straw and put a layer of that down over the top of that extremely muddy ground, and it wicks up a lot of that moisture and it'll keep you trapping in some pretty soft grounds. But this overall though, I think for me what I do is one, post length, and then number two is site selection, and then number three, it could very well be that I've got a lot of pigs that are coming and I'll condition them until I can catch as many pigs as possible with one catch night, and then I'll back away from them until that trap site dries up just a little bit before I go back in at it again. But that very good question, very common question.
Right. Yes. It's definitely something that I hear. Something that I don't hear as often, but something worth mentioning is T-post thinking. Like if you're trapping on soft ground, sometimes as you have like pigs coming to your trap system and that weight on the net, if you try to set again, your T-post may be a little shorter. So there are some methods for keeping your T-posts above ground. Um, One being a mailbox mount and putting it upside down. And I know that sounds kind of crazy and hard to imagine, but if you ever run into that situation, give us a call and we can help you out. what should you do, or how does the trap handle if you have non-target species around your trap system?
First, I think it's going to depend on the species. If you know that you're going to have problems with raccoons or deer or anything like that, think about baits that are not highly selected for those by those species. That very well could be like on your deer. It could be using their capsaicin that we've got the publication on. The other thing that if you've got any deer concerns, bigger deer concerns, is that I've got to the point on high deer density areas that I'll take plywood, half-inch thick plywood, and I'll cut it in 2 foot squares, and I'll cover the bait inside the trap. And those deer are not known to paw that plywood over, to flip that over, but a pig will flip that plywood over in a hurry to get to that bait. So you can slow your deer down with sheets of plywood. I even know that the guys that are trapping, the folks that are trapping in Canada, they use downfall, just any of the limbs that fall out of the trees, the fir trees and things like that. They cover their bait with brush, and that slows the deer and the elk down substantially, but it doesn't slow the pigs down. And then Abby, one of our friends out in West Texas, old George Wardlaw, he literally uses prickly pear cactus, and he covers the bait with prickly pear cactus, and the deer doesn't go after that bait and then that prickly pear cactus, but the pigs don't slow down. Now, if it's raccoons, the one thing about the raccoons is that if you know you're going to have a big problem with raccoons, is I bury the bait. Just go with a pair of post hole diggers in the center of your trap, dig a hole deep enough to put your bait in there, and then cover it with a couple of inches of dirt. And the pigs will dig that out, but the raccoons leave it alone primarily. The other concern about raccoons is sometimes you can get quite a few raccoons at a trap, and they're like, man, they're eating up all my bait. Well, sometimes, Abby, I get people say, well, why do y'all recommend 4 to 5 pounds of corn per pig whenever you set the trap to catch? Well, we're not basing that solely off pig numbers. We're basing that off of numbers of other non-target species that could be giving us problems. So if you do have the deer come in for a bite or two here or there, then we go in there and we make sure that we put enough bait in there to offset that. If we've got 10 raccoons coming to our trap, we make sure that we put that enough bait in there to give those raccoons enough to get out of the way, and we still have enough bait to catch our pigs.
Hmm.
The other thing is going to be too is that whenever I try to avoid a lot of non-target species, I do it by my actions. And when I do that is that whenever I go in to condition a trap, is to bait that trap, to pre-bait it, is I do it at the same time every day. And so after a couple of days, pigs are just like cattle. If you fed cattle, it doesn't take but a couple of days when cows know what your routine is. And a cow's a pretty dumb animal. Okay, so you're looking at a pig, and a pig's pretty dadgum smart. And so it doesn't take long before pigs acclimate to your behavior. So a lot of times I go in and I bait at the same time every day. Whenever I get finished baiting, I'm only away from that trap for a few minutes before pigs start showing up. So that cuts down the time that you could have interference from any other non-target species. So there's several things that we can talk about. And I know that we've got a couple of webinars coming up later this fall that we're going to really do a
Hmm.
deep dive into these non-target concerns and so forth. But it could very well, one, what's the non-target species? Number two, can we do it according to the bait that we select? Or number three, can we avoid the non-target concerns based on our behavior to condition pigs to do what we want them to do?
Exactly. And we already have, like we had the upcoming webinar where we're going to do a deep dive, but we also have information in the form of blogs on our website and videos on our YouTube. So if you are thinking about buying or know you're going to purchase, think about what you're going to be seeing, and you can go ahead and start looking at some of the information that we have out there. And Aaron already gave some really good pointers for deer, raccoons, but if you are having issues finding any other information from our website, again, feel free to let us know, and we'll definitely get you more information on that, because every situation is going to be different, and we understand that. So we are going to roll on. I don't see any other Q&As. We did have someone write in, so I appreciate that. Oh, here comes one. How many trees are needed for a tree set?
Short question. The what we say or what we recommend is at least 6. So we want to make sure that we have at least six. I know that the folks in Germany, they want to have at least five. Um, we would like to see there be six traps and somewhat form a circle, so forth and so on. It doesn't have to be a perfect circle. I've never heard a pig complain for the trap not being in a perfect circle. So it's something that what I do is I'll go in and I'll count my trees, and for a tree to be a candidate in a tree set is if it's within 15 foot of where the side wall of that tree will be, I'll use my cam straps or a ratchet strap, and I'll go out further away from that, from where the trap is itself, and attach to those trees. So I use a minimum of six, and if I get seven or eight, I'm good. But if I can't find any more than six, I'm okay with that. The other thing, Abby, that what we can do is if we have trees that we may only have four or five, what we do is what we call a hybrid set. We use what Mother Nature's given us in the form
Mhm.
of the trees that will work. And then where we need additional trees, we will go ahead and put in a one or two T posts to make the rest of that circumference that what we need. So we call that a hybrid set. It's just a blend of trees and posts. So straight tree set, six is a minimum if I can get them in the right spot. But if I'm going to use a hybrid set, sometimes I've used as few as three trees and then replaced it with four or five more posts where I
Mhm.
needed them. So a lot of times we see that hybrid set that can be done in agriculture situations where they're putting up traps in the turn rows on your ag fields. And you may be able to tie off to your corner posts and a couple of maybe of your line posts in the corner of a field, and then you make the rest of the circumference with T posts out in the actual turn row itself.
Awesome. Awesome. We have another question here in the Q&A box for you, Aaron. So the question is, are pigs happy inside after they are trapped? And how long do they stay inside of the system without panicking?
As far as the happy, I think that's going to be directly correlated to how much you've put in there as far as bait. We've got libraries full of videos that'll show pigs in a trap that are just as happy as they can be because they'll get into that trap, they'll eat as much bait as they want, and they literally lay down and sleep it off. Many times I've gotten to a trap at first light and the pigs are still sound asleep inside that trap. Whenever I walk up to it, they have no idea that I've even walked up. They are completely content. They got plenty to eat and they slept it off. Now, for the how long they're going to stay that way is going to be when the sun starts to come up. So that's why we recommend and very, very strongly recommend that you get there no later than first light. Because as soon as the sun starts to come up and those pigs realize that we're not where we want to spend the rest of the day, then they're going to start trying to escape any way they can. And it's not that they're scared of the trap, it's just the fact that they don't want to be exposed. And then also, too, pigs do not tolerate direct exposure to sunlight in hot conditions. Pigs don't sweat, so if they're exposed to the direct sunlight, especially in the summertime, it doesn't take long before those pigs will succumb to exposure. So yes, the question is, will they be happy in the trap? Yeah, if you feed them enough, they'll be happy in the trap. And then if you get there early enough in the morning, before first light or no later than first light, they're going to be content as well, but they
Mhm.
know it's time to go home when the sun starts to shine.
Exactly. Thank you for that, Aaron. I don't see any more questions in the Q&A. I'm going to let them come in a little bit more because I have a couple other questions that I've put together. So one that I do hear, especially from people in Texas, can I live load pigs or trailer pigs with this system?
Absolutely, you can. And so, first and foremost, what we want you to make sure that you're aware of is that what state you're in, you need to check your game laws, your pig laws, because most of the states out there do not allow for live transport of wild pigs. So you want to check your laws to make sure that you're not gonna break any of those and have some problems with the game warden. But what we do with the Pig Brig Trap System is knowing ahead of time if you're going to be trailering those live pigs is to set up the trap to where you have the seam of the trap facing where you'll have to back the trailer in from. So make sure that that seam is facing in the direction it needs to be. And then once you get that trap set up in place, then we go ahead and put a couple of load panels in place in the trap itself, or a load gate in there. That way, whenever we back up to that trap, it's a very short turnaround. You don't want to have to try to attach panels or gates with pigs in the trap, or they're going to try to eat you alive. So whenever you're
Mhm.
knowing you're going to load out of that trap, go ahead and put that loadout feature in there. Which, what I mean by loadout feature is attach your load gates or attach whatever to the trap that you're going to need. And then that way, whenever you get to that trap, all you have to do is back in, get your trailer positioned the correct way, and pull the seam on that pig brig, and it opens up
Mhm.
the section, and you can load out of that trap very, very quickly, very easily. The folks that we have that are loading out of the trap now are at the trap less than 5 minutes before from the time they arrive to the time they've already got pigs in the trap. So it's a very well oiled machine, very efficient to try to load out.
Right. Exactly. Uh, so we have another question in our Q&A for you, Aaron. So we have, once they start trying to get out, will they break the net?
To
And I
break
believe
it,
this is
no. Yeah, this I think is a follow up to that question about it them being
right.
happy in the trap and all that.
Yes.
So what they're going to do is whenever it starts to get daylight and they start trying to leave that trap, they're going to try in every way they can to leave that net. One thing to keep in mind is the tensile strength of the Pig Brig Trap System is about 8,000 pounds, and so with the way that that trap is constructed using T post or even using the trees, it's a dynamic net. So not any one specific location takes that full abuse of that pig. It's um, spread out throughout the expanse of that trap. So even though that tensile strength of that trap is 8,000 pounds, it's going to be able to handle a lot more than just that 8,000, just because it spreads the pressure. The other thing that you do have to be concerned about, those if you leaving those pigs in there prolonged and they realize that they can't run through the trap, they may start trying to chew on that net. Well, prolonged chew, if you don't get there until 2 o'clock in the afternoon and they've been chewing on that trap since 6 a.m. that morning, then you may end up having some damage in that trap, but not from the trap breaking as the pigs are trying to run through it. But if they're left in there for a prolonged period of time and they start trying to chew on that net to get out because they realize there's no other way they can do it. But an 8,000 pound tensile strength net is going to hold any pig on the planet.
Yes. And we have another really great question. Why would someone want to transport live hogs?
Question, and we get that
Mhm.
question all over the planet, and so in some states like Texas, Oklahoma, and Florida, they have approved holding facilities that are licensed by the state that will accept and pay for live wild pigs because they have another market for them. Like in Oklahoma, those live animals can be sold to approved licensed hunting ranches. So they'll buy those pigs for hunting opportunities for recreational hunters. Whereas in Texas, they go to a holding facility, and once that holding facility has enough wild pigs, there's two locations in the state of Texas, one in South Texas and one up outside of Fort Worth, that they only process wild pigs, and that's to go into a couple of different markets, just depending on where the money's at. But the bottom line is the only reason for transporting live wild pigs is for financial incentive. Now, we do know, like Abby, I said, whenever I was in Arkansas this last week,
Mhm.
the Feral Pig Task Force in Arkansas said last week that over 50% of the pigs caught in Arkansas and genetically tested during 2024 were directly related to populations in Texas and Louisiana. And so they were displaced by more than 200 miles, which means that there was illegal transportation in that. And so it still automatically gravitates back around to financial incentive. Whether that financial incentive is legal or illegal, that's the reason why people are willing to transport live pigs. It's all surrounding a financial incentive.
Right. And then circling back to what you had mentioned earlier, if you are considering something like that please check your state regulations. It may not be legal in your state. You may need a special permit. So there are things you need to check out beforehand if this is something you're considering.
Too, Abby, we need to make sure that they're reminded of as well, because like in the situation of Arkansas, with those populations being directly related to populations outside of the state, is that feral hogs in the United States are considered a federally considered to be an exotic and invasive species. So whenever you start to trailer those pigs and you cross state line, now it's not just a state violation, now you've had a federal violation because you're transporting an exotic species across state line. So it's that can definitely get to be much more serious. Trying to transport pigs across state lines, and that financial incentive is just not going to pay out.
No, not hardly. So I don't see any other Q&A. Oh, actually, I spoke too soon. So do you know of any states that offer a bounty for pigs, like similar to beavers?
The ones that have the ability to, yeah, and the short answer is yes. I think most of them have. Most states have offered a bounty for pigs, and personally, I'm not a fan of it. And this goes back to, I guess, the lengthy career that I had with Texas A&M and seeing what people do, because I was directly affiliated with bounty programs in quite a few different places around the state. Is it turns into a fraud situation? Is that if you're paying, say, for example, $10 for a pair of ears, and people we found that were frauding the bounty, because they would go buy pig ears from a processor in the county and turn those in to get paid for them, and they may pay the processor $5 for a set of pig ears or a snout or a tail or something like that, and then they'd go in there and they'd double their money and get paid $10 at the bounty, and had never even owned a trap or even done anything with a trap. So the bounty systems are very sketchy at best as far as being beneficial, because there's so many people out there that try to fraud the system. The other concern about a bounty system that I am very well aware of, that almost broke a county that didn't have a lot of money, is a very rural county in Texas, that didn't have a lot of money, and they felt the bounty would be a good thing for them, and they were paying $10 a set of ears, and they had to pay out a bounty on so many pigs that they literally put the county into financial stress, to be able to hold that bounty, and then they quit the bounty the next year. Well, what happened is that they reduced those pig numbers in that county so drastically that the habitat flourished. And whenever the habitat flourished, the reproductive efficiencies of those pigs were even higher than they were prior to the bounty. And so whenever they discontinued that bounty, the numbers of pigs were then back higher than they were before they ever even started the bounty. So it's definitely, and in a situation with beavers reproductive recruitment is so much slower than pigs. So in those situations with bounties on other species, they can very much be effective. But with the reproductive abilities of pigs, bounties are not typically very effective at all. And then you add to that the fraud component. It's just something that people usually do it once and they never ever do it again.
Yeah, that's a very interesting take, and a very interesting perspective that I haven't heard before. So thank you for sharing. So I just have one more question for you. It's something that we're beginning to hear more is how long will the net last, the net trap last?
Question. Now, first off, is that the net does have a 10-year UV coating. So the mesh itself is covered with a coating, a UV coating that says if you leave it out in the parking lot exposed to the sunlight for 10 years, it's going to still hold up for you. Now, with that being said, the caveat is that's if there's no pig interaction with it. So basically, what we tell people is the longevity of a pig brig system is going to be about 5 years, and that lifespan there is going to be depending on how well you take care of the net, how many pigs are caught in the net, so forth and so on. So if you were to catch 1,000 pigs in your trap and it's only 3 years old, you may need to replace it. Whereas if you catch 100 pigs a year out of your trap, it may last 10 years if you take care of it. So it depends on how it's used, where it's used. The other thing is that if it's going to be wet, and that trap is going to be exposed to a lot of wet conditions, is when it's not being used. Get it out, get it dried, make sure that there's no bacteria, no funguses, no molds or nothing like that to start building up in the
Mhm.
net. So care is going to be a big thing. But the other thing, Abby, we need to always remind people too is that never, ever, ever do we use heavy detergents or cleaning agents on that net. And the reason for that is those heavy detergents and cleaning agents will degrade that UV coating, that UV protection, and cause that net system to break down faster. So we want to make sure that if you're cleaning your net, the way that I clean my net is I got a livestock water trough that's about 150 gallons, and I'll put the net down in the livestock trough. I'll fill it up with water and let it set overnight, and then basically the next day I can pull the net out of there and just simply pop it,
Mhm.
and it pops all the mud and all the trash out of it. Then I hang it up on the fence and let it dry, and it's good to go. But if I'm not using the net, I'm going to store it. I make sure that I store that net in a trash can or a heavy duty plastic tote or something like that to keep the rodents from being able to chew on that mesh. Because if you roll it up and then throw it in the floor of the barn over in the corner, and then here comes the old wood rat coming around trying to repack the nest for the wintertime, they'll sure enough get into your net and make some air holes for you for sure. So
Mhm.
make sure that you put it in a heavy tote, seal it off, put it in the side there, keep it dry. And we've got Abby, we've got some nets there that are over 10 years old and that are still in excellent working condition. So it just depends on the number of pigs, how well you take care of it, and how well it stays stored when it's not being used.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's something that just bouncing off of storing your net, something that I had heard recently is just how do I get the net in a container and knowing that it's going to come out not in a knot. And something that I had found whenever I was trapping, Aaron, I don't know if you have any tips, but I folded my net in half and rolled it. And so that way I knew that whenever I took it back out of the crate or the tub that it was in, I rolled it back out and I opened it back up and it's not in a tangled mess. You don't have to fight to find the top line or anything like that. So that's just something that I thought would be fun to share. Aaron, I don't know how you
And I
store
do
your net.
basically Right, and I do basically the same thing. And then what I do is I store mine with the warning sign on top. That way, whenever I
Mhm.
take it directly out of the storage container of whatever it's in, then I start hanging my net from the seam. So the seam is right there adjacent to the warning sign. So I know my seam is right there whenever I open it up, and I can literally pull it out, and it's ready to hang up, and it can be done pretty quickly.
Exactly. Awesome. Well, I think that's all the questions that we have for tonight. So I'm going to start wrapping this thing up. We really, really, really appreciate everyone being here tonight. Thank you so much for your time. Aaron, thank you so much for your time and for the presentation, and just the preparation that goes into hosting a webinar. So just as a reminder, I know I said at the beginning, but I'll say it again because I think we had some people trickle in since the beginning. You're going to receive a recording of this webinar in your email inbox in the next couple of weeks. So keep an eye out for that. And we're also going to send out some other emails of upcoming webinars. So keep an eye out for those as well because we have some good ones coming up. And thanks again for sharing your time with us tonight. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your evening.